Welcome back in. Let's talk fantasy football ranks for week 11 of the NFL season and of the fantasy football season. If this is your first time checking out one of these videos, what we do is we go game by game. We'll talk about starts and sits and positional ranks for each player in the games. They will show up on your screen right here. We'll go game by game and then team by team within game. We're going to try to move pretty quickly, and we'll just go through from the start of the slate to the end of the slate. So Thursday night football, for example, the Jets travel to New England to take on the Patriots, where the Patriots are heavy favorites, 11.5 point favorites at home with a lower over under 43.5. For the Jets, normally I would have Justin Fields as a starter. Again, I'm with you. I don't think he's a great NFL quarterback, but for fantasy, his rushing is real and it works and it gets fantasy points. He can be a starter for you. In this week, though, there's just a lot of guys that I like ahead of him. So as we go through these ranks, I'll call out a little bit more where in this situation, I have Justin Fields at 21. That is not the same as in other weeks. This week, we've got someone like Aaron Rodgers taking on the Bengals, that he would be a lower ranked guy, probably lower than Justin Fields, who's now pushed up because he's in a great matchup. The way this week works out, there's just a lot of pretty good matchups. So Fields is at 21. I'm just not confident in him. There's a chance he breaks a long run for a touchdown, just like any game. But there's so many other guys that I feel have a safer floor. Brees Hall, I've got at 21. Garrett Wilson likely to miss this game. I don't know that there is a wide receiver one that I want in his place. Got Mason Taylor at 21. I just think, hey, the team probably can't move the ball very well against this defense. For the Patriots, I've got Drake May at 2. I've got Trivia Henderson ranked at 15. If we hear later in the week going into Thursday that Ramondre Stevenson is starting, I do believe he would still have a role and that they would go back to him. It's not like the Patriots hadn't seen Trevion Henderson in camp or in the preseason break these long runs for touchdowns. I'm not sure why they weren't going to him, why they were going to someone like Jennings, someone like Ramondre Stevenson. I'm going to trust that they probably go back to him, and I would have Ramondre as like a 22, Trevion as like running back 28 start. And then for receivers, I've got Stephon Diggs as a starter in the 20s. And then a deep option would be Kayshon Boutte if he's playing, or Mac Hollins. Hunter Henry is a startable tight end as well. And again, just like I was saying with Justin Fields, I have Hunter Henry listed here as tight end 20. There is not a lot of difference between tight end 12 and 20. They're all kind of one big blob. So they're all okay and startable. For the next game, we've got another overseas international game in Spain. The Commies take on the Dolphins. The Commies are listed as the away team. Let's start with them. And there's not a ton to say. There's not a lot of guys that I really want to be using here. Go away from Marcus Mariota, go away from any of the running backs. I have Krosky Merritt listed here, but I'm not sure that he's really even the guy. Debo Samuel, you can start him. He will get targets. And then Zach Ertz is like a better Hunter Henry to me. He'll get targets. He's still talented. He's old. He's fading. He's at the end of his career, but that's still useful in fantasy football. For the Dolphins, it's 3 guys. Tua, who I have at 18. He's an okay deeper option. He's usable in a super flex. And then Achane at 3 and Waddle at 13. You want to get these guys into your lineup. They are the Dolphins offense. I don't know what the rest of the year brings for the Dolphins, but right now these guys are startable. We've got an NFC South matchup for our next game. The Panthers travel to Atlanta to take on the Falcons, where the Falcons are 3.5 point favorites. Not great teams here in the matchups. Panthers 5-5, Falcons 3-6. Low over under 43.5. We can start with the Panthers. Bryce Young has not looked amazing since coming back from injury. There's some tougher defenses like Green Bay. They won that game, but he didn't look amazing. If you have Rico Dowdle, we're using him. Chuba Hubbard would be a deep emergency option for a flex or an RB2 in a much deeper league. And then Tet McMillan's really the only player in the passing game that I want for the Panthers. I really like Tet McMillan. I'm hoping that better production follows. Like, he is the lead part of this offense. We're just hoping to start seeing more touchdowns for him, and then he would spike up. I've got him at 26 this week. And then for the Falcons, we can go through this pretty quickly. Penix is kind of a no. Bijan is a definite yes. I know some people have been panicking on Bijan. I do have Algier listed here as a deep flex option. I don't know that there is a deliberate plan to make Algier the red zone 5-yard in running back. They have both been getting touches, and it's kind of just sometimes that's how things go with how they split up drives in a split backfield. I think Bijan is still the main talent here, and I have no problem putting him at 1. Got Drake London at 8. I think he's in general a top 5 wide receiver. There's just a ton of good receivers that are available this week and very few on bye. So he would slip down to 8, still an immense talent, and you want to be starting him. And then Kyle Pitts can be a fill-in for you if you've lost Tucker Kraft. If you then pivoted to Kincaid and lost him as well, I think you're fine going with Kyle Pitts. For the next game, we've got the Buccaneers traveling to New York to take on the Bills, who are 5.5-point favorites at home. The over-under 48.5. This is a higher scoring game projected by Vegas. I think both of these teams have solid defenses, but they both have really good offenses. Let's start with the Bucs. Got Baker Mayfield at 9. There's just a couple guys in better matchups that I like ahead of him. If you have him, you could feel comfortable starting him. Rashad White and Sean Tucker, the running game. I'm not really looking to use either one of these. I still think Rashad White would be the lead guy, but I'm not excited for either one, and I would try to find a different option. I'm not sure when Bucky Irving comes back, but we know it's not this week, and it might not even be next week. In the passing game, Emeka Ibuka I've got at 12. Fantastic rookie. No one else really here. Tez Johnson is a late flyer, and then Cade Otton had double-digit targets last week, and I think that they would go back to him again in this game. For the Bills, we can keep this quick for them in most weeks. Josh Allen at 1. James Cook, you're starting him. Khalil Shakir as a deep flex option or a deep wide receiver 2 in some weeks, depending on your buys. Keon Coleman, you might want to find something else. And then if Dalton Kincaid plays, he's someone that you're using. Otherwise, that passing kind of goes to Dawson Knox, and it's not really someone you want to use for fantasy football. The Texans take on the Titans in our next game. Houston 7.5-point favorites on the road. Low over under for the week. Now, I've ranked this game as though CJ Stroud is back. I have him at 19, which is startable. Again, like we've been saying, this is just a good week for quarterbacks. There's a lot of viable options, so that would put CJ Stroud down at 19, but I like him in this matchup. You can move the ball on the Titans. For the running game for the Texans, it's Woody Marks, Nick Chubb, Marks as a flex, Nick Chubb as a desperation flex, Nico Collins you're putting in your lineup, and then Dalton Schultz, again, as a flyer tight end. It's just kind of the way this week is working out, where there are a lot of decent players in great matchups that would push Dalton Schultz down. He's very similar to me to a Cade Otton, who I just had at 12. I think he's just a slightly less talented player. And now with the way that the rankings work out, he ends up at 19, but they're close to interchangeable for me. Looking over to the Texans, the home team, there are 30 quarterbacks I've ranked this week. I have Cam Ward at 30. Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard are the only guys that I would feel okay using. And then Calvin Ridley, I've got at 46. Not every team has a wide receiver 1. There's a couple teams that are just kind of bad. The Titans fit that category, and the Raiders in the Monday night game that we'll get to later, they also fit that billing as well. I kind of just want to get away from that offense if I can. For the next game, the Bears travel to Minnesota to take on the Vikings, where the Vikings are 3.5-point favorites at home, which is not as much as I thought. Maybe I'm just a pessimistic Bears fan. The over-under 48.5. Let's talk about the away team. Caleb Williams, I've got him at 15. Like I've been saying, a lot of good matchups this week. I think the scrambling is real. This is a tough defense to move the ball on. This defense can confuse a young quarterback, but if things start to break down, I believe Caleb can just get some rushing yards. He's in line to get a rushing touchdown. He had one against the Vikings in week 1. It wouldn't surprise me if he had some good yardage on the ground this week. For the running game, and we weren't sure if it was going to be Swift or Monangai last week. Monangai winds up in the end zone, but Swift gets more of the work, just like it was before DeAndre Swift missed a game, and I would expect it to stay like that for a lot of the year. Monangai's role could continue to expand. He's a decent young player, a good value find in the 7th round, but he's not a key starter. I've got him at about 30. I'd be looking for other options. And then Swift, a solid RB2. Rome Odunze, I'm going back to him. He's the lead target in this offense. We've seen some disappointing weeks, but with Ben Johnson's offense, they will tailor it for the game plan and go to other options. DJ Moore has had some really disappointing weeks, and that one would worry me, where he's not a key player here. He's not a first read in this offense, so I've got him at 42. Colston Loveland, after a massive game against the Bengals, I was saying, hey, temper your expectations. I had him as a starter last week. He's down to 16 here, which is not actually that far off in my mind to where I had him last week. It's just the ranking last week was 10. Right now it's 16, and it's just very small tweaks there. He is still usable if you're looking for a tight end in a pinch. The Vikings, we've got J.J. McCarthy at 20. You can move the ball against this Bears defense. He is starting to look better. and he'll get some yardage on the ground. I expect things to start turning around for the pass catchers here. I've got Justin Jefferson at 6, Jordan Addison at 29. They have had some tougher matchups. The Lions are a pretty solid defense. Season long stats will say the Ravens are not a good defense, but I don't think that's accurate at all. They're just a healthy version of the Ravens. An injured version of the Ravens is a bad defense, but those players have gotten much healthier. And I'm not surprised to have seen JJ McCarthy struggle a little bit against the Lions, a little bit against the Ravens, and for these pass catchers to show that. Now, they were able to move the ball last week. Jalen Naylor is just the one who came away with the touchdown and some of the deeper shots, but Justin Jefferson had 12 targets. Jordan Addison had 11 targets. And against this dinged up Bears secondary, they've brought in new players like CJ Gardner-Johnson, but he's just filling in for practice squad level secondary. So I think they can move the ball here. I've got Hawkinson at 16 as well. And then in the running game, Aaron Jones 23, Jordan Mason 34. It's about a 50-50 split. I think they'll find some success on the ground. I'm just not sure if Jordan Mason gets into the end zone. Aaron Jones could easily catch a pass and get into the end zone here. I have them as a solid RB2 and a flex option. We'll move on from those two NFC North teams to talk about another NFC North team, the Packers, traveling to New York to take on the Giants, where they are 7.5-point favorites. Over under 43.5, lower scoring game here. We'll talk about the Packers. I've got Jordan Love at 16, and you can move the ball on the Giants. I'm not as worried about this defense for the Packers matchup. You know, on Monday night, the Packers played the Eagles. That's a much tougher defense than the Giants. So I'm trusting Jordan Love here in some spot starts. Josh Jacobs, I'll go to him. For the pass catchers, no one here really excites me. Dobbs, Golden, Watson, Musgrave, Dontavian Wicks. You never really know who it's going to be, and they're all kind of middle. So let's talk about the Giants. They have removed their head coach this week, and now it is Mike Kafka taking over. So we might see a change with how the Giants run things. Now, I have Jackson Dart ranked. I'm not positive that he plays. I've got him ranked at 12, which is really just to say the most useful way to make this video is if Jackson Dart is starting, he's 12. If he's not starting, it's not really going to change a lot of the other options for the Giants. And Russell Wilson would not be someone that I'm looking to use. So he would be way further down the list. Let's talk about the running backs. I'm not sure that it's a 50-50 split anymore now that they've moved on from their head coach. Mike Kafka could have a different idea of how he runs this offense. It could be Tyrone Tracy. It could also be Devin Singletary. I would stash these guys. I don't really want to pick one as their lead guy and guess. So I've got them ranked back-to-back, both as options I don't really want to use. For the pass catchers, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Theo Johnson, they're all decent options. In the 30s, wide receiver 3s, and then Theo Johnson is someone you could start in a pinch. We've got an AFC North rematch for the next game. The Bengals travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Now, we've seen this matchup with Flacco on the Bengals against the Steelers. They came out ahead. They were able to move the ball on the Steelers. The Steelers defense has started to look better since then, though. Over under here is 48.5, and Pittsburgh's favored at home. For Flacco, I've got him at 6. We've seen it work. It's just continuously been working with Flacco in this offense. It's not winning them games, but they are able to move the ball. I've got Jamar Chase at 4, T. Higgins at 17. You know, Jamar Chase could have 15 targets again this week. He's easily clearing double digits in all of these games with Flacco. T. Higgins has found the end zone a few times. He's had games with low targets, and then T. Higgins has had games with, eight or so targets with Flacco, and I feel fine starting both of them. And then same thing with Chase Brown. If there's no Samaje Perine, it's just Chase Brown leading this backfield. He has returned to top 15 running back. We drafted him as around 10 or 12 with Joe Flacco there. There was a down period, and now he's just back. So I'm fine with all of these options. For the Steelers, with the matchup here, I kind of want to get my Steelers going. I think the Steelers players in general are all maybes each week. And in this week, they're yeses. I can use Aaron Rodgers against the Bengals. I will definitely use Jalen Warren. I could use DK Metcalf. For the next game, we've got the Chargers traveling to Jacksonville to take on the Jags. Over under here's 43.5. Jags are favored at home, which is a little bit interesting to me. Vegas is still believing in the Jags. Let's talk about the away team first, though. I've got Justin Herbert at 10. He's been a solid quarterback. Things have not hurt him as much, not having Joe Alt. We might still see that it does. I've got him as a solid starter for you, though. Kamani Vidal has been the lead option for this backfield without Amari and Hampton. I've got him at 20. He's a solid starter. We expect him to get a lot of the work. And then the pass catchers, I've got McConkey as the top rated one, Johnston, and then Allen. And then if Oronde Gadsden plays, I would have him at around 9. He's listed as day to day, which means he could be playing through pain. He could be out there maybe just as a distraction, drawing the defense to him. We're not sure. So I'm not excited to use him until I see things like he's practicing in full or he's fully healthy. And then I would move him up 1 or 2 spots. But check the injury reports for him. I mean, there's always a chance he just misses the game. And then no one would really fill in his space as fantasy viable. That might move up Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston a little bit if there's no Gadsden. But we'll wait and see on him. For the Jaguars, I've got Trevor Lawrence as someone I'm not looking to start. I'm not sure which wide receivers are playing. We now know that there's not going to be Travis Hunter for the rest of the year. Brian Thomas could be back after an ankle injury. The team hasn't really said much. If it's not him, then Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers are decent options for your flex. Travis Etienne, he's been an RB2 all year. I have him as an RB2 right now. He's a solid RB2, and that's just about what he is. In each given week, he'll be somewhere between 12 and 20. And this week I have him at 17, and you can use him. He's a plug and play, locked in RB2 for your team, kind of irregardless of matchup. Maybe the word is regardless. It might just be regardless of matchup. Who knows? For the next game, let's talk about a NFC West matchup. The Seahawks travel to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. The Rams are favorites at home. This is a really great matchup. Seahawks have been putting up 30 plus points a game. Rams can pretty much score at will in their games. The over under here is 48.5. Let's talk about the Seahawks. Because the Rams, they can score, but they also have a pretty solid defense. So I've been moving Darnold up and up and up as they've been adding pass catching options. We didn't see a need for them to pass against the Cardinals, and I think they will have to throw to keep up with the Rams. So I've got Darnold at 13. For the running backs, I can never tell. Is it Charbonnet? Is it Walker? The Rams have an amazing run defense. I could be fine if you just went away from both of these guys. Wide receivers, you're using Smith and Jigba. Rashid is a deep desperation option. Maybe this is the week he gets involved in this offense. I mean, they just didn't really need to last week. The Seahawks were winning 21-0 at the end of the first quarter. So deep passing kind of comes off the menu a little bit. Cooper Kupp is another guy who could get some catches here. Maybe it's a little bit of a revenge game against the Rams. I don't really believe in that very much, though, so I have him ranked pretty deep down. If you put him in your lineup, hey, I wouldn't really flinch at it. I personally would not be. For the Rams, there's not really ever going to be any confusion. Stafford is a go. Kyron is a go. Puka is a go. Devontae is a go. If you have these guys, they either need to be in your lineup or you need to be making a trade. For the second week in the row, we have 2 NFC West matchups. The 4 teams just playing each other, 2 different combinations. Let's start with the 49ers. They're never going to tell us if they're healthy. Is it Mac Jones? Is it Brock Purdy? I'll never tell. I'm not that excited to start either one of them. The Cardinals are an okay defense. Christian McCaffrey we're using. Juwan Jennings, I've got him as a wide receiver 2. If Ricky Pearsall were playing, he would be in this ranking spot, and then Juwan Jennings would get knocked down. And then Kittle, I've got at 4. For the Cardinals, I don't really want to use Jacoby Brissett. Do you? Does anyone? I don't think anybody really does. I've got Bam Knight at 33. He's a solid little running back. You could also use Amari DiMercato. I think some of what we saw last week with Amari DiMercato getting more work was really just related to they got blown out in the first quarter with defensive touchdowns and then were consistently behind. And that will lead to more DiMercato. Marvin Harrison, I've got as a wide receiver 2. On the year, he's wide receiver 27, which is lower than I thought. But with Jacoby Brissett, he's been getting a couple more targets, a little bit more. I really would like to see this team move on from their coach and bring in a different offensive scheme and different plan. But that's not what we have this week. We've got Marv in his current plan. I've got him as wide receiver 20. And then Trey McBride, if you have Trey McBride, use him. For the next game, we've got the Ravens traveling to Cleveland to take on the Browns. The Ravens, they're favorites. You might have guessed. That the Ravens might be the better team. They're 8.5-point favorites on the road. The over-under is only 40. These teams played each other in week 2, and Cleveland was holding the Ravens down until the Ravens just kind of exploded all over them. And I think the final score was something like 500-8. It may have been 10-3 at the half in that game, and then the Ravens blew up. So I think we might, even if we see Lamar slowed a little bit in this game, he's still someone I'm going to. I'm using Derrick Henry. I'm using Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews is a good option for a touchdown in this game. That's kind of what you're hoping for if you use him, which is why I would have him ranked behind someone like Cade Otton, where you're hoping to get 8, 9, 10 targets. Mark Andrews, you're hoping to get 3, 4, 5 and a touchdown. 5 targets and a touchdown would be a great game. 3 to 4 seems a little bit more reasonable. On the other side of the ball, the Browns, Dylan Gabriel has been a nice young player. I don't want to use him for fantasy football. Quinshon Judkins has been really good in a lot of tough matchups with a not so great offense around him. I've got him at 11. If you have him, you should be using him this week, or maybe find a way to make a trade to tweak your lineup around that. You probably don't want to twerk on your lineup. Dylan Sampson, meh. And then Harold Fannin and Njoku, both decent tight end options. And then keep an eye out for Jerry Jeudy. I don't know how to describe, like, there's not good logic behind this. Basically, what I mean is Jerry Jeudy in the first half of last year was outside the top 40 wide receivers. In the second half, he was like top 5, top 6. I don't know that there's any sort of rhyme or reason to it, but he looked good last week. If we start seeing him come back on, we have seen him have sustained periods of success and sustained periods of nothing. So if we're moving into a period of success, he's someone to stash. I don't want to start him, but if we're getting a great run again from him, like, I want that to happen for me and not someone else. So I would get him on my bench. We're moving into the final 3 games of the week. The Chiefs travel to Denver to take on the AFC West leading Broncos. Divisional matchup. I don't think the Chiefs can take the lead in the division in this matchup, but they definitely need a win here to stay in the race. Chiefs are favorites on the road, over under 44.5. Let's talk about the Chiefs coming off of a bye. We've got Pat Mahomes at 7. Andy Reid has traditionally been pretty good off a bye. If you give him time to prepare, he's I don't know if you know this, Andy Reid is kind of a good head coach. So I've got Mahomes at 7. Broncos have a really good defense. This is kind of just going to be a unstoppable force, immovable rock with a rock, I think, getting kind of moved. The running game, though, for the Chiefs, we don't know if Pacheco is back. The first thing that we've heard from Andy Reid is we'll see. So I've got it ranked as though it's Kareem Hunt and Brashard Smith and maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire even ahead of Brashard Smith. Brashard Smith's name is listed here, which is really just saying, hey, maybe coming out of the bye, they've put him into a larger role. We've seen the Chiefs do that in years past with rookies. I'm not looking to start him, but keep his name on your mind. Maybe if we see something from him this week, he's someone we can pick up again. That's kind of the rate he's at. He's been dropped or droppable. But if I see something, I would start to believe it after a bye with the Chiefs. Rice, if you have him, you're using him. Worthy is a flex option. This could be a higher scoring game. And then Travis Kelce as a solid tight end. He's just been a safe tight end for you. Let's talk about the Broncos, though. I've got Bo Nix at 14. The Chiefs are also a tough defense. These teams are just both kind of solid, good all around. Bo Nix has looked shaky in the past couple weeks. Maybe he bounces back. Maybe the news reporting of him looking shakier leads to differences in preparation. Maybe. I feel like we're all just kind of guessing. But it's not uncommon. This is a week-to-week game. It's not uncommon for players to have bad weeks and then bounce back. They know they had a bad week. We're not the only ones who know Bo Nix has been struggling. The Broncos probably know it too, and they might know a way to fix it. That's my guess. So I've got him at 14. I have ranked the Broncos, though, as though J.K. Dobbins is not playing. So I've got Harvey at 19. There could be someone else who gets brought in. It could be Bidet. It could be someone else that is on the Broncos who gets carries but is not usable for fantasy and just takes work away from R.J. Harvey. I don't expect Harvey to go from a 30% snap share with Dobbins there to now 50, 60, 70. That would really surprise me. I think he'll have a larger role and someone else can run it on first and second down and just not be nearly as good as someone like Dobbins or someone that we want to use. For this week, I have moved Courtland Sutton to 16 and Troy Franklin to 22. I'm not exactly sure that it's just Franklin becoming the lead option, but it wouldn't surprise me. I've been moving these guys closer and closer together. Courtland Sutton started the year hot. He was great last year. He's had some down weeks, and Franklin moving into bigger weeks. Some of those games were against tough pass defenses. Franklin had a much better game against Houston, who has a very good passing defense. So it could just be possible that their game plan was, if they take away Cortland Sutton, we have another option. That's not crazy. So I've got them ranked at 16 and 22, and we'll just keep trying to add more information and learn more as we go. For Sunday Night Football, we've got a big one. The Lions head to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. This could be a playoff tier matchup. Philly favored at home, with the home team usually getting about a 3-point edge. They're favored 2.5. So this is looking to be a pretty even game on a neutral site. Over under 47.5. Both of these teams can score, and both of them have solid defenses. This is going to be a lot like what I was saying with the Bills and Tampa. Just solid teams that can both move the ball. We didn't see it on Monday with Philly taking on Green Bay, but that's a very good Green Bay defense. Lions are not quite to that level. Let's start with the Lions, the visiting team. I've got Goff at 11. I've got Gibbs at 2. Like, come on, that's pretty obvious. And then David Montgomery has moved a little bit back down to flex role. He's always likely to get a touchdown in this game. It's definitely possible in any game that Gibbs and Monty both get touchdowns. So I've got him as someone you can start. I would be fine with some teams just having Monty as my RB2. That wouldn't be crazy based on the rest of your lineup. Got Amon-Ra as a must start. And then with the change to play calling, I'm trusting Jameson Williams a little bit more. Maybe they go back to their offensive coordinator as the play caller, but during this game, they switched to Dan Campbell, and then the targets for Jameson Williams started to increase. So if I see targets increase and there's an event to tie it back to, that I can believe in. So got Jameson Williams rising up in the ranks this week, and then Laporta at 5. This is just kind of a solid tight end. There's always the chance that their game plan doesn't really involve Laporta, but I like him in any given week. For the Eagles, there's not that much to discuss. If you have these players, you know what you're doing with them. Hurts, you're starting. Barkley, you're starting. Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown have gotten to starter tier. I know we might be worried about A.J. Brown. He's someone I'll probably end up using. If you wanted to get away from him, I understand. If I have A.J. Brown, I'm still going to have him in my lineup. And I have him back-to-back with Devonta Smith. It didn't work out that way with A.J. Brown as the lead option on Monday. But he's still an immensely talented receiver. This team could have moved on from him, and they know that he is very talented and will be. I expect at some point this year, we'll see him scoring 20 fantasy points again. Dallas Goedert, just like Laporta, he's a solid tight end for you. He's always going to be around ranked 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 until we see that he shouldn't be, and he is this week. For the final matchup, Monday Night Football, we've got the Cowboys traveling to Vegas to take on the Raiders. Cowboys favorites on the road, 3.5 points, over under 50.5. I think that's one of the highest of the week. Let's talk about the road dogs coming off the bye week. Cowboys, I've got Dak at 4. If you have Javonte, you're using him. If you have Lamb, you're using him. If you have Pickens, you're using him. If you have Jake Ferguson, you're using him. There's not that much to discuss here. Pickens should be in your wide receiver 2 or your flex option or your flex position, or now's the time to start combining assets. Like if you're not starting George Pickens or you're wondering, is he the best flex for me? That most likely means we need to combine something and get that George Pickens value into your lineup, either as George Pickens or traded in a 2-for-1 deal and then as someone else. For the Raiders, it's kind of the opposite of the Cowboys. If you have Geno, I don't want to use him. Genty, I will. Trey Tucker, no, there's not really any receivers that I want here. And then Brock Bowers would be the only player that I'm excited to use in this game. Genty's an okay RB2, but Brock Bowers, if I have him, we're going to be using him. And that brings us to the end of our rankings. Thank you for sticking with us throughout the whole thing. If this helps you set your lineup, let me know. Drop a like. Drop a subscribe, drop a comment. I do reply to the comments on these. A lot of them are just start-sit questions, and some of them are in the video. Those ones I maybe I'm less inclined to respond to. But let me know if I missed someone, if I saw any mistakes or any changes you would like to see in this video. This is our first season doing this. I'm just one dude. Thank you for watching, and I would really appreciate it if you liked it. If not, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.